So no exploration of the JavaScript canvas or the HTML canvas would be complete without actually looking at how to do a simple drawing program using the canvas. And what we're going to start with is just look at, being able to do something like draw a line when you sign your name on that, the credit card swipe thing, and you use that pen and it never quite looks like what you signed. That sort of a functionality where you can move the mouse around or move your finger around on a tablet and actually draw something is what we're going to do. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to combine mouse events with the line drawing capability that we've already looked at this week. And the logic of this in a nutshell goes like this. When the mouse goes down, let's say we're on a computer with a mouse as opposed to a tablet. When the mouse goes down, we're going to begin path and move to wherever the coordinates are where the mouse went down. And then while the mouse move is taking place, we're going to just constantly listen for those mouse move events, and we're going to do line 2 and stroke. And we're going to draw lots of little tiny lines that are all connected together in order to make this thing work. And then finally, when somebody releases the mouse button, we're going to stop drawing, right? So those are essentially the steps that we're going to implement to make a drawing program. And so all the pieces of how to do this are things we've already seen, and we're just going to put them together in a new way. So here's my my page. And basically all it's got on it is a canvas, and you can see that here outlined with a black border. Excuse me. And if we go to our JavaScript, you'll see I've already gotten my canvas element and my context, and you can see I've set a stroke style, and a line width that we're going to use for our drawing initially. And this video thing actually I think is left over from the last example, and we don't need that. And of course we have a Boolean variable called isDrawing, and we're going to get to what that's for in a moment. But let's just take a look at the steps that we just laid out and see how they're going to play out in JavaScript in order to make this thing work. So first of all, we just said in the slide that we're going to do something when the mouse goes down, we're going to do something while the mouse is moving, and then we're going to do something when the mouse goes up, which is to stop drawing. And this is actually where this Boolean isDrawing comes from. And basically it's because the mouse move event is happening all the time. Anytime I'm moving that mouse around on the screen, it's firing all these mouse move events. We need to listen for them, but we're going to ignore them unless the person is intending to draw, which actually means unless the person depressed the mouse button, we're not going to pay any attention to the mouse move events. And so that's what brings us to the first section of our code, which is going to be under the mouse down to set isDrawing equals true. So when the mouse goes down, isDrawing is going to be true. And then while the mouse is down, that's when I need to do something in our mouse move handler, right? So the first thing I do in mouse move is just test. Am I drawing or not? If I'm not drawing, I'm going to ignore it. I don't have to do anything. If I am drawing, well, there's some stuff to do. And then finally, on the mouse up, well, that's kind of the opposite of what happens on mouse down. I just set isDrawing to false, so that now, once I've released the mouse, I don't really care about the mouse move events. They just happen as much as they want. So this takes care of the first part. Pardon my clock. This takes care of the first part of our example. And so the next thing we have to do is figure out, now what are we going to do the rest of this, right? We looked at the slide. It says mouse down, I have to begin path and then move to X and Y where the mouse went down. So begin path is easy. We just pop that in right here. And then move to, I have to have a way to get the X and Y where this is supposed to go. And the question that I ask in the classroom at this point, does anybody remember the exact name of the property I need to use to get where the mouse went down with respect to the containing div? And the correct answer to that question is usually no, nobody remembers what that is. And you don't have to, you can go look it up when you need to. I won't make you watch me look it up now, but the property on the mouse event that we're looking for is client X and client Y, and that's the coordinates relative to the top left corner of the enclosing DOM element, which is the canvas, where this happened. So by doing this, I'm doing a move to right where I put the mouse down. And then the next thing I'm going to do is inside my line drawing, inside my mouse move, I'm going to do a line 2, and I'm going to do a stroke in each. Basically, every time I get a mouse move event, I'm going to connect these. There's going to be a bazillion of them, and they're going to be very close together. But by doing this, in a nutshell, we've made a line drawing program. Let's go and see if it works. I reload my page, and look at that. I can draw lines just by dragging the mouse around on the screen. If I reload, I can do it again, make a new line, doing something different. So in the most basic sense, that's a line drawing program. Not much to it. Now, we can make this better. You might notice that there's a lot of really jagged edges on these line segments. And there's a couple of properties that we can use here in the 2D rendering context that might help. Here's one called line join. And what this actually does is it determines how connecting segments in a shape are joined together. And if we set it to round, it shows us that it's going to round off the corners by filling in some of the gaps that happen between the square edges of these things. You can see the effect of it here. So line join is one of them, and the other one is line cap. And these are things that are in the documentation that you can look up. But what I'm going to do up here is I'm just going to set join to round and cap to round. And by doing that, if we come back here to our example, we should actually see that it's a little bit better. It's not tremendously better, but it's a start, right? So it improves the jagginess of it a little bit by setting those things to round. So that's kind of cool. It doesn't make for much of a drawing program. Great, I can draw red lines until I reload the page. Not really very exciting. So we're going to do a couple easy things to make it a little better. Now you can see here I've got a bunch of buttons. I happen to have some buttons. And you can see that each of these buttons, I have 3 color buttons. The class is color, and the ID is a different color for each one. And then I have a clear button as well that I put here in my code. So if I reload, you can now see here's my red, blue, green, and start over. That's my clear button. Now, all I need to do, because I have the ID of each button with the color it's supposed to be, I'm just going to use jQuery to attach to every color class something that sets the stroke style to the ID of that element, which happens to be the color, right? If we go back and look at this, you can see I made ID red, ID blue, ID green. Those are all valid color values that I can use in HTML, so I'm just setting the stroke style to be that. And if we save this and go look at it, let's reload, I can draw in red because that's the default, but if I pick blue, now I draw in blue. If I pick green, now I draw in green. I didn't hook up my start over button yet, and so for start over we're going to go back to here, and we're going to find a method called clear rect, which clears a rectangle, and we just give it the XY height and width, or XY width and height I should say, in order to do that. So let's pop that in as well. Right, so now I have a clear button. Just make all these line up because it looks better. And now my clear button should work. We can go test that very quickly. I can draw, I can clear, I can draw again, I can clear. So far so good. I can do a lot of good things here. Now the one thing that I can't do, you know, when I've done some beautiful artwork, because of course you can do beautiful artwork here, it's like having an Etch-a-Sketch. People can work miracles with them, although I certainly am not one of those people. One of the things that we might want to be able to do is actually save this when we're done. And we already know how to save it, right? We saw saving in the last video by using a data URL and setting the location of the web page to that data URL, particularly with a binary data type, MIME type applied so that the browser knows to save it. So I'm just going to take this whole thing, and this is attached to our capture button, and this is the exact same code we used in our last example that lets us do this. It's going to append an image, it's going to capture it and append it to our page just so we can look at it, and it's also going to do, using the toData URL, it's going to save it as a JPEG, and then as it loads it into the URL bar, it's also going to replace that image JPEG MIME type with an octet stream MIME type, which is going to tell the browser to download it instead of display it on the screen. So let's see what happens when we do this. I'm going to reload my page. Let's say I'm using this as a way to capture my signature. That's really hard to sign your name on a trackpad. And when I hit this save button, it saves it to the page and downloads the file. Now, why is it black? Might be the question that you ask. And there's an explanation for this. And here's the explanation. All this surrounding area in our canvas has no data in it, right? When we look at our bitmap, that's RGBA, our RGB for all of these elements is 0 because we haven't drawn anything on it, right? They're just empty space. And when you save 0, RGB 0, in an image, particularly an image format that doesn't support transparency, you get a black background, right? Now, I could have set the entire background to this thing white first. I could have painted the entire thing with RGB 255, 255, 255. Right? Or I could have drawn a white rectangle the entire size of this, and that would have been a perfectly good way to deal with this. But because I didn't, I get transparency, and JPEGs don't support transparency, so I end up getting black. Now, if I wanted to actually have transparency preserved in this image, what I'd have to do is save it in an image format that supports transparency. And it turns out that PNG supports transparency. So if I just paste this in here with the MIME types changed from JPEG to PNG, and I reload this, and we do it again, I won't make you look at me, oh, maybe I will make you look at me sign my name. When I hit save, we now get a PNG with a transparent background. In fact, if I open this, you can see that this is a transparent background. Gray is just the transparency color that I see in the back of my my viewer. So drawing program, we've used all the things that you've already learned how to do in this class, right? This is a lot more fun than doing, well, the object literal has a property that can't be seen from the, like that stuff is, not as exciting as this. But the truth is that stuff was all important to be able to get here, because here, what are we doing here? We're using events, we're using objects. Well, of course, here we're using jQuery to take care of a lot of this for us. We're using string functions to replace the MIME types in the images. All the things that we've learned on the way to getting to this point were really important to really understanding what's going on here. But once you get here, it starts to get really kind of fun. The sky's the limit with what you can do. This is the last official video in this course. There will be an unofficial one that I'll post as well. But it's been an absolute pleasure doing this with you. And I think I've learned an awful lot from the class and from a lot of you as we've gone, as you've pointed out things that are not quite right in the course, or areas where you've seen a problem set that could actually be made better by being more specific, found ways to improve on the solutions that we were providing. This has been an awful lot of fun, and thank you very much, and hope to see you again in another class.